An Unusual Tale from Canalville, and An Unusual Virgin Mary Story from Heaven. Here is something that came to my attention the other day. It's a journal entry from a villager in Canalville that never made it in the Canalville newspaper, nor my book, The Very Fine Light. It's an example of things that happen in and around Canalville, I guess you'd say. Anyway, here it is, directly from the journal itself. And I'm quoting from the journal. Quote, "While driving home the other night, I sort of remembered that the Virgin Mary says that God takes care of what we need. All we need to do is have faith." And the account continues. "Well, I considered that things have been going along all right for me and my family, but should that change, how strong would my faith be? My thinking is that it's easy to think I'd be full of faith and all of that, but then again, I wondered about it for a few minutes and then put it out of my mind. I had not eaten much for dinner, mainly because I wanted to lose weight, but I was still hungry. What would be open? Well, just outside of Canalville, I was passing the box store and decided to stop in, as I know they have a sub shop inside, and grab a sub sandwich. Even though I typically support all of our village businesses, but as it was Sunday evening, I knew no stores would be open in the village. So, well, what would you do? As I got to the door, I noticed a homeless fellow just at the entrance. I wondered, did I have any spare change? I like to keep a few bucks for such occasions, but I only had a $20 bill on me. "I'll give you something when I come out," I said in response to the fellow's request. Now, once inside the sub shop, I waited as they prepared my sandwich to go. Suddenly, there was the homeless guy coming in and a woman pushing a cart full of bags with merchandise she had just bought. And she said to the worker, "Give him what he wants. I'm paying." Whew, I thought. Now I don't have to give him anything. The fellow ordered a big sandwich and drink as the woman paid, and the man seemed very relieved to get something to eat. Well, I reconsidered. I had told him I'd give him something, so after receiving a $10 bill in change and some ones, I turned to the guy and handed him the small bills. He seemed surprised and said, "Thanks." As I got in my car, I couldn't help but notice how much darker it got, and then it started raining a cold rain. I was almost home and crossed an overpass near the interstate. It's a pretty large overpass with 3 lanes each way and a median in between. During the daylight hours, it's not surprising to find a homeless person seeking spare change there. But what was very surprising for me that night was to see someone there so late and in the rain and dark. The homeless man was facing the cars in the other direction, and I was several lanes abreast of the median and well out of his purview. Since I had just given the other fella something back at the box store, and all I had was that 10 spot, besides, the homeless fella was several lanes away, and though almost no one else was on the road, I just determined to stay the course and get home. Besides, I sort of had a plan for what I was going to use that cash for the next day. Now, I was almost parallel to him when I glanced at the man. I could not see him straight on as he was looking in the opposite direction, but his silhouette was striking. From my viewpoint, his physical appearance, he had a square jaw and a signboard he was holding with both hands, legs spread to secure his torso, leaning forward to support himself against a gust of wind. His image as he stood there in the elements registered something in me as I drove on. At first I thought it was his stance. It sort of looked like a Dutch painting in a way, but then I realized he sort of looked like Jesus in my mind. And though I quickly rationalized, turning back was a bit impractical. Besides, someone else would give him some cash, and all I had was that $10 bill. Yet the image made me remember the Bible saying something about the least of these in need may be Jesus himself. Well, I quickly reconsidered. A quick turnaround would not delay my return home, but gee, I hated to part with that 10 spot. Why didn't I have a $5 bill? Plus, what a pain to have to turn around to go back. I was hungry. I just wanted to get home. But that thing about having faith popped back into my mind. So I turned around and headed back. I honked as I came up and handed him the $10 bill. He was as surprised to get it as I was to give it to him. Suddenly, something came out of my mouth. It just came. Talk to God. He loves you, and He's here and listening. Talk to Him. He just looked at me and said thank you. I was very surprised at myself for saying it. Where did that come from? Shaking my head as I continued to drive towards the end of the overpass, now I made a U-turn, heading back towards where he had stood, and passed him once again, seeing that same silhouette. Suddenly, he turned and waved to me as I drove off. It made me glad I'd done this. When I got home, I tore open the sandwich wrapping. To my surprise, a sub sandwich never tasted so good. And now, the second event, a poem actually, called A Legend of the Pyrenees. Deep in the Pyrenees dwelt Pierre the drover, with 6 small children clamoring for bread, while he had none to give them, and, moreover, a 7th child was coming to be fed. Poor Pierre went forth at night and wandered lonely, he knew not where, with heart so sad and sore. His thoughts were centered on his young ones only, whose cries rang in his ears still more and more. "Halt," said a threatening voice, "your gold count over." It was the robber chief El Capitan. "Alas, my lord, but I'm a wretched drover, flying from hungry mouths as best I can." He told his story to the lawless ranger. "Here, take this gold and buy your children food. And when the stork comes again with the little stranger, I'll stand as gossip while I'm in the mood." The outlaw kept his word. Thus lightly given, a boy was born. But after 3 short years he died, and his young soul took flight to heaven. And at the gate he stood. "Enter, my child," said Peter. "Swell the chorus that surges round the throne of the Most High." "I cannot," said the child, "Apostle glorious, except you also let my godfather by." "And who is he?" "A robber of the mountain." "My son, a robber cannot enter here." At which the boy sat down, and like a fountain dropped from his eye tear after bitter tear. But then approached a lady robed in splendor. Celestial brightness shone around her head. To him she said, in accents soft and tender, "My child, why weepest thou? Come in, nor dread." It was our Mother Mary, Queen of Glory, who spoke thus sweetly to the drover's child. While gathering courage, he told his simple story, which, having ended, Mary, Mother, smiled. "Take to thy godfather this cup, a measure from which my son drank vinegar and gall, to sore athirst, and when 'tis filled with treasure, the gates of heaven will open at his call." El Capitan outside his cave lay sleeping, a pistol and a dagger in his hands. But when the shades of eve around were creeping, he wakes and starts, for lo, beside him stands a cherub with a lovely face and holy, and wings of silver. "Spirit, who art thou, who comest from heaven to me, so lowly? A man of crime, 'tis written on my brow." "My godfather, the blessed Virgin Mary, sent thee this cup to fill it with thy tears. For thy salvation's sake, then, not be chary of them, and weep away the sins of the years." Years fled. St. Peter stood at heaven's portals, and saw approaching 2 figures robed in white. And well the guardian knew that they were mortals, redeemed and saved, who came to claim their right. One was a cherub with the stamp of heaven set on his face. The other, meek and mild, seemed as a sinner who had been forgiven through penitence. Thus spoke the angel child. "Behold this cup, 'tis filled to overflowing with tears of anguish for the misspent years." "Enter," St. Peter said, with face all glowing. "There is no passport like repentant tears." The poem by the Honorable John Hayes in William J. Walsh's book, Heaven's Bright Queen. The Very Fine Light is available on Amazon.com. please feel free to contact me at nicosteves.com. That's Nikos Steves, Steves.com. If you like this episode, and for more, share them with friends, and consider William J. Walsh's book, Heaven's Bright Queen, Apparitions and Shrines of Heaven's Bright Queen. Well, this is Nico Steves. Thank you. See you next time.